Hello, my loves. I am Rockette Fox, and welcome to Mindful Storytelling, Honoring Your Story. First and foremost, I'd like to ask your grace and apologize for the sound quality on this video. I do have a microphone here, but today it is just for show because it was giving me a weird buzzing noise, technology, you know what I'm saying. So hopefully the sound of my echoing voice hovering around you in the dark is not going to be too distracting, but I thank you nonetheless. So for a little bit about myself, my name is Rockette Fox. I am a Korean American biracial, queer, witchy woman activist, performer, artist, and for the purposes of this talk, storyteller. And my storytelling background goes back some amount of years, and I have told stories at various different venues, from true to life tales of my own to folk tales, fairy tales, things that I wrote, etc., etc. I also used to host a monthly storytelling event in which people would gather and we'd have arranged speakers and open mic for stories that would focus around a specific theme, such as forgiveness or interactions with strangers, things like that. It was a lot of fun, and I'm actually hoping to bring that back. So if you are in the Midwest/St. Louis area, keep your eyes out for that because that is going to be coming soon. But yes, so you may be wondering, Rockette, storytelling for a weird and paranormal event? How does this tie in? How does this all fit together? Well, this particular talk that I'm going to be doing for you focuses around the idea of telling your own story, and this can translate into a lot of different arenas, whether or not you are going to be doing video, podcasting, whether you're going to be streaming, whether you're just going to share experiences that you've had with people around you. How you present it is always going to matter, and how you present your story to yourself also matters, which is why one of my big focuses is to approach storytelling for your own story from a place of self love and getting into this mindful thinking space. So, hopefully, that answers any questions off the top of your head so far. And without further ado, let's get into it. Now, as we start off, as we enter this virtual space together, you may be a seasoned storyteller, you may be story curious, you may be wondering what this is all about and really have no interest, and you may leave soon thereafter. But either way, I want to start off with just some basics around the structure of what I'm going to be presenting to you. So, first and foremost, this is a workshop that I've generally done in person, so I'm going to be rearranging things so that it makes sense in the virtual format, and hopefully that works for you. I will give my contact information at the very end of this. I would love to hear what the experience was like for you, if you have any questions, and if you are further interested in more storytelling, just workshop stuff, advice, pretty just to say hi, things like that. But yeah, nonetheless, you are here. You are here now. And even though we are virtual, all of us who are in this space as this goes up, this is a unique experience in which we're all together in this moment. And I want to really honor that. You have a story, your experience matters, your story deserves to be told. And I want you to go ahead and let that sink in, let that settle in. Again, you may be someone who's told your story before. You may wonder what your story has that other people's stories don't. You may know already. But either way, there is something about your experience that is important and that resonates for other people, and even just for yourself, deserves to be heard. And I think that's really important. So, by choosing to be here right now, in this moment, you are honoring your experience, your story, and all of the people down the line that you share your story with. Now, even as, again, I keep saying it, we are virtual, there are certain things that I would really like for you to keep in your mind brain as we move forward, even though we may not see all of the people that we're experiencing this moment with. So all of these things I want you to really take in for yourself as you go through this process. First and foremost, I want you to encourage yourself. It's really, really, really easy to put something down and our inner editor comes out right away and it's just like, yeah, it's trash, get it out of here. I don't want you to really allow that space to happen. Just for the purposes of this workshop, I'm not going to tell you how to write, how to do your own thing, how to story tell, but just for this space, try and take that editor, thank them for being present, and then let them take a little break for a minute. Go out, get some coffee, grab a drink if they want, but go ahead and put that editor out just for a little bit. The next thing is I want you to try to come forward without judgment. If you have a story idea that percolates up within you, and then all of a sudden you think, nobody's going to want to hear that, or it's not that great of a story, those are judgments. And I want you to do your very best to try and set those aside as well. Anything that you feel rises up within you and wants to be told, it wants to be told, and that's okay. Whether or not you end up telling the story to anyone or you just write it down for yourself, it matters either way. So I want you to try and let this be a judgment-free zone. I want you to feel free to ask questions of yourself, possibly of me, again, if you give me a contact later on. I would love for you to be present in this experience. I would love for you to really, if you have some tech things, just take the phone, turn it over, maybe put it on silent, and if you can, create a mindful space for yourself. I would love for you to respect that space for yourself. Now, if we were in person, I would say respect the space for all of us. And I think in respecting it for yourself, even though we aren't in the same space together, I do feel that that tends to have some sort of mysterious way of being. And I think that can be very powerful. And lastly, I want you to respect your experience. This kind of goes back to the idea of approaching without judgment, but anything that comes up for you, respect it. Show it the kind of respect you would for a best friend or someone that you're talking about or listening to their story without judgment. I want you to make space for that and really hold that tenderly. And that is a really big key of the idea of storytelling with mindfulness and self-love. Now, on the whole, told stories work very powerfully when you have a theme that you're operating under. Or if you think of it in terms of a folk tale or fairy tale, there's some sort of, not a moral per se, but there's something that you're coming back to, something you want your audience to walk away with. So for the purposes of today, what we want to focus on is the theme of a time that you felt empowered in the face of something weird. So that could be the time that you were picked up by aliens. That could be the time that you woke up and saw the man in the hat at the foot of your bed. There are so many different ways we could go about this. So I want you to think about a time that you had something very strange happen and you responded with some sort of empowerment. And if you feel like you've never had an experience, that is weird, think about a time when you felt empowered. And I'm going to walk you through some exercises that will help get your mind percolating on this. If you've had a weird experience, but you feel like you didn't act from a place of empowerment, think about what that really means, though. How did you feel afterward? How might you have responded to this circumstance in a way that really helped preserve you? And again, we're going to be going through some exercises, so go ahead and get your mind thinking about that. Now, as we go on, I'm going to give you some writing prompts. It's not homework because we're going to be doing it together, but I will give you some of these prompts and then I'll leave a little bit of space, but not too much because I don't want you to get bored. So if you can always pause things if you want more time. But I'm going to try and work things in as best as I can. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some of these prompts. So the first thing I want you to think about is weird experiences. And you're going to make a list. I love lists. I know a lot of people love lists. Hopefully you love lists. If you hate lists, just bear with me and humor me for this. But you are going to make a list of 7 weird experiences that you've had. And to kind of help get you going a little bit, I'll give a couple examples that I've experienced. So, one example would be from the show Liminal, which I am actually a part of and would highly recommend from no biased place. But I legitimately think it's a very good show and a very important show as well. Essentially, it is a show in which we explore the paranormal through the queer and trans lens and see how these things correlate with each other and how much power there is within that. And the first episode is live on YouTube. You can check it out. It's, I want to say, 90 minutes in total. And I am not going to spoil it for you, but there is a moment in the show when we're doing exploration. We're doing a little bit of ceremony. And by we, I mean I was doing a little bit of ceremony at the very end. And something happened that was a little spooky. I was super excited about it. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but something happened when I did a little bit of a ceremony. And that for me would be a major moment in which I felt like, that's a weird thing that happened. Another example would be there was a time when I was really young that I was spending the night at a friend of mine's house. And I don't remember this, but people told me later on. Apparently, I woke up in the middle of the night and was hysterical. Apparently, I saw this tall man in a dark, I don't want to say necessarily a cloak, but like dark clothing, standing in the corner of the room just staring at me. And I could not be calmed from that point. Was it a night terror? Maybe, but I didn't really have a history of that, so it sticks out to me as being a little unusual. So, with those 2 examples that I have, go ahead and take the next couple minutes and write down 7 examples, if you have 7. If not, write down as many as you can, examples of weird things that you've experienced. All right. Hopefully, you got as much down as you possibly could get. If you had some extra ones and 7 wasn't enough, I hope you added them on there. It's always good to have more. But we're going to be moving on to our next list, and this is a list on being a badass. For this, you are going to write down 8 things that make you, yes, you, feel like a badass. So that could be anything from saying no, to wearing huge heels, to throwing a glass of water in somebody's face. I don't know. Whatever it is that makes you feel like a badass, I want you to write down 8 examples. And that's one more than the last list. They steadily grow in numbers. But once again, to help, I am going to give some ideas just for myself. And not having prepared in advance, let me think for a second. I would say one of the things for me that makes me feel like a badass is when I do my makeup all up. I tend to do looks that are a little more extravagant, a little more unusual, if you will. And that makes me feel really powerful when I go out and I walk around. I gave this example briefly a second ago, but saying no when somebody asks me to do something and I literally do not have the bandwidth or the spoons or the time, being able to say no to that, I think is very powerful because I'm somebody who has a very hard time saying no, a people pleaser, you might say, who wants to get involved in everything. And as time has gone on, I've found that that's not humanly possible. So saying no is something that I find makes me feel like a badass for myself because I'm honoring my own boundaries. Likewise, setting a boundary, even if it's not outright saying, no, I don't have time for this. Um, let's see, let me think of a couple more. And hopefully you're using this time as I'm giving you examples to write some things down. Um, but I would say another thing that makes me feel like a badass is when I go to the thrift store and I'm looking through the aisles and I find that one thing that is super cool and super cheap and a super cool brand. I go in there and I feel like a badass. I feel like Indiana Jones of a thrift store. Like it feels like I have accomplished something. So that might be another one for me that I would put down. And do not think that this list has to correlate with the last one. We're going to bring it all together. But all that being said, take the next couple of minutes and finish out your list on things that make you feel like a badass. So now that you've finished your list of badassery, we're going to actually stick with that for a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to look back over each of these items and you are going to distill each of these items down to their essence, down to their core components. And what I mean by that, I'll explain through my own examples that I gave. So for the first example that I gave was doing my makeup. So for me, why does doing my makeup make me feel like a badass? I'm giving this knowing look because if we were in person, I would want to open the floor. So hopefully you had a thought on maybe why it would make you feel like a badass. But for me, what it is I'm known in a lot of spaces for these kind of eclectic makeup looks that I do. And so it's almost a sort of personal branding that I've developed. So it's a way of asserting my identity in spaces that I go out into. They tend to be a little, again, strange and a little attention grabbing. And I like that. That makes me feel like I have control over when people are looking at me, for example. Having been a biracial person in a fairly white area, that's something that I experienced a lot. And I found that having control over why people are looking at me made me feel powerful. Additionally, it lets me practice artistry in a way that I can really show off anywhere I go. It lets me change my look up so I can almost chameleon a little bit on occasion when I want to. So there's a couple different things that I might distill this down into. I think if I had to choose one, I would say being able to have control over how I present my identity. Control is something that comes up a lot as I've been explaining this, but also artistry, branding, things like that. For my second example that I gave of saying no, that makes me feel like a badass. Usually in the aftermath, after my feelings have settled down, because usually when I first say no or set a boundary, my first feeling is not that of badassery. My first feeling is that of immense anxiety and a lot of stress. But in the bigger picture, it makes me feel like a badass because I'm caring for myself. and I'm looking out for myself first so that then I have the extra resources to help other people and actually really put all of myself into it as opposed to being stretched too thin. So it makes me feel like a badass because I'm caring for myself. I'm showing myself love. And let's see, the third example I think was the thrift store one. My That's how long my memory lasts. But that one makes me feel like a badass because I love finding stuff and it makes me feel like I have been able to go into a situation and just like find a treasure. Again, like an Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider, Lara Croft. Like it makes me feel like I've accomplished something. So maybe a feeling of accomplishment would be why that feels good to me. Also, I love deals. Uh, thrifty spender. So maybe part is that as well. So all of that being said, I want you to go back over your list of badassery, and I want you to take a second and think about each of those items and think about why that makes you feel like a badass, and then just write it out next to it. It should be no more than like a word, 2 words, not even a full sentence. But go back and do that, and I'm going to give you a few moments to do so. All right, so now you are done momentarily with your badass list. At this point, I want you to go back to your list of weird. Now go through these examples that you have written down and pick one. It can be the one that interests you the most. It can be the one that you have the most feelings crop up. You can close your eyes and just point to one of them, but just pick one of those. And that is going to be the story that we are working with. So now that you have your topic and your focus of the story, what we're going to do is we are now going to look at the who, what, where, when, how, why, all of those details and logistics of the story. And we're not going to write them out in story format just yet. I want you to bullet point all of this stuff because we're just kind of I don't want to say idea vomiting, but that's what came to my mind first. So sorry about that. But think about where this happened. Was it in the country, the city? Was it in a house? Was it in a factory? Was it in a car? For the example I gave before about the ceremony that I did for Liminal, it was in the forest in Tennessee. It was kind of on this little dirt path. Think about when your story happened. How old were you? What time of year was it? What time of day was it? Going back again to my own example, it was summertime. It was August. It was at night. It was just a few years ago. So all of this is going to play a role into how you approach your story. So some of the other things to think about: how did this happen? For me, I was filming a show, and that's how I ended up being in the space. Were you maybe going to sleep? Were you driving somewhere? Were you going to work? Um, why did it happen? Could kind of go along the same things. Was there a reason you might have been seeking out something strange? Is there a reason why you may have been a little more open to an unusual experience coming to you? So I want you to think about all of these things. Again, focus on the who, what, where, when, why, how, and make bullet points of each of those things. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. Now we are going to go back and incorporate our list of badassery. So I want you to take another look over all of these things that you listed down that make you feel badass, that make you feel powerful. This is really important because these are the first 8 things that came to your mind. So these are things that, whether or not you realize it, really just like are coming up from the inside, being like, yes, this is the way that I feel power. And certainly there are many more than you've listed, but these are some really good ones to start with. So now I want you to take a look over everything you just wrote out for your weird experience that is going to be the setting of this story. And let's take a moment to see if there's any overlap. Yeah? If you think about what led up to the story, think about all of the things that surrounded it. Start to think about, where were you mentally, emotionally? What was happening in your life? What might have been something that you took away from this experience? How might this have changed you? Think about all of these things and then look back at your badass list and see if there's any places where you feel a little electricity sparking between those two. Going back to my example of the ceremony, what was I experiencing? We were filming the show. I was also going through a separation. I also was going through some major life changes in that moment. And it was also the day after my birthday. So there were a lot of things happening for me. When this experience happened, I found that I felt incredibly calm. The people I were with, they did not feel calm. They felt very freaked out. But I felt just this huge wave of calmness and peace come over me. I felt like I was in a place where I belonged. And for me, that felt very powerful and very badass because I found that even though there was all of this chaos and uprooting and clutter going on emotionally, mentally, and all these things, I was able to find myself in a place where I felt like I had a handle on things, where I felt like things were welcoming and made sense and very peaceful. So for me, that's a moment that felt very, like I mentioned from my badass list, in control. I felt like I had an amount of control. And that's something that has meant a lot to me in my experience in my history. So, doing that same kind of thought exercise, I want you to look at the list of things that you just wrote out, the bullet points, your story, and look at your badass list and try to see these places that converge and then pick something that you feel you took away from this strange experience that is something that you might have learned about yourself, about the world, or some way in which you felt like you really changed or came away different from that. And now we are going to write the story outline. Now, you can, anytime when you're telling a story, not necessarily go by the timeline, right? You can tell a story where it's like, this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and it was the biggest major climax of the story. And now let me tell you what led us to this moment. For our purposes today, we're going to do it via a regular timeline, chronologically speaking. So what you're going to do for your timeline is you're going to write out, again in bullet points, each of the things that happened. And I don't want you to go into too much detail. I want you to write this out in terms of, like, using myself as an example. A, car pulled up to the parking lot and parked. B, got all of my stuff, went into the forest. C, set up everything around myself. D, you don't have to do this by letters, by the way. That's just how it came out. D, started the ceremony. So to give you kind of an idea, go through your story and write it out like that. It's going to be kind of boring just to look at, but this gets us into the right space where we're going to be able to put all of it together, and it is going to be fabulous. So now I have given you all of the basic necessities you have to write your story out. Things you're going to want to keep in mind. Set the scene, make it delicious. Tell your audience all of the interesting details. Take us to that place. If you are someone who has your story taking place when you saw something weird in the closet, right? Describe what your room looked like. What did you hear? What did you see? What did you feel? Take us there with you. And that is going to be really, really beneficial as you tell your story. Now, I am going to assume that you are going to write your story after this takes place, because writing a story does take a little more time and effort than just like a couple minutes for me to pause and carry on. So before you go off to do that, I want to leave you with some things that should be helpful when it comes to actually telling your story in a public platform. So, the first thing to think about is that you are performing. You are going to be sharing something personal that happened with you. And that is an amazing thing. That is super vulnerable. That is super brave. And you should be incredibly proud of yourself. Even just writing this down, even taking these steps to re experience something, to write it down, to be willing to take that step is amazing. And you are amazing for doing it. So I want you to take a moment, inhale, bring it in, and sit with that for a second, because it's something really profound. Stories are how we share experiences, perspectives. Stories are how we communicate ideas and how we really understand other people's ideas as well. It's one of the most powerful things, and it's one of the oldest forms of interpersonal connection that we have, is the telling of stories to each other. So that being said, note that you are a badass and really own that. So, as you go forth to tell your story, some things that I think you'll find helpful. As hard as this can be, try to memorize it. Try to memorize your story. Take some time, and you'll find that it allows you to be more present and connect with your audience other than holding something in front of you. It's very easy, especially when you're doing something vulnerable and brave, to, if you have something in your hands, to really get lost in it. And when you do this, it is really hard to connect because we want to see those eyes. We want to have that visual connection. And also, when you're looking up at your audience, your voice is going in that direction as opposed to going down in this direction. So, memorizing is going to be really, really helpful. To that end, don't just memorize the words of the story. Try to memorize tonal changes. Try to memorize gestures. Try to memorize the way that you would do the story if you were performing it. Because in a way you are. It's authentic. It's very real. It's valid, but it's also being performed. Those things can both be true at the same time. The next thing, and this can be really hard, and I want to acknowledge that, is to slow down. If you are not accustomed to public speaking, chances are you are going to speak incredibly quickly. Even if you slow down to where you feel like you are speaking excruciatingly slow, it's probably not as slowly as you think you're speaking. We tend to speed up when we're nervous. So make it an active choice to speak more slowly. That will allow people to hear what you're saying and really enunciate your words. Find places in your story, and this goes back to memorizing, where you can pause, where you can breathe. Even knowing which moment you're going to take a breath can be very helpful. Because it's very easy to be telling a story and then you get really wrapped up and then you start telling the story and you go from one sentence to the next sentence. And then as you keep going, you suddenly find that you don't have any place to breathe. So then you breathe in a place that's really strange. And not that that can't be useful, but that can really take people out of the story. That can take you out of the story, because then, at least for myself, I become very aware, like, oh man, I just breathed in the middle of that sentence. That was odd. So having all of those things worked out beforehand can be incredibly, incredibly useful. The next thing is going back to this idea of memorization, connecting with your audience. So you want to connect with your eyes, with your face, even with just your which direction your face is pointing. You don't have to be looking at anyone specifically. This isn't an activity for people who only have good visual. Like, you can just be pointing your face at where your audience is. And that's still connection, right? Changing the tone of your voice as you speak, that's connection. Think about speaking to people and not at them, right? Because when we get into the space of performing, it is very easy just to be like, I'm throwing all of this at you. Try to remember that you're telling people this, that you're sharing something very important. Even if you don't feel like it's the most important thing, it's important. It's something that you experienced. It's something that you have that nobody else has. No one else is you. And no one else has had this exact experience that you've had. And that is what makes it amazing. So just remember to connect with your audience. And then the final thing that I want to share with you is to be proud. You are doing something, I cannot emphasize it enough, absolutely spectacular. You are sharing something of yourself with other people, be it friends, family, or total strangers. You're doing something worthy of being proud of. Stand tall. Hold your head up. Breathe. Speak slowly. All of that is a part of being proud. Own the space that you are in. You deserve that space. That space is for you. And it's important. And it's important not only for you to show yourself that you deserve the space, it's important for other people to see you in that space and just owning that space as well. Be proud of what you're doing because you are doing something truly wonderful and truly important. And I, for one, am proud of you. So, all that being said, I want to give a huge, huge thank you for attending this workshop, talk, video experience with me. It has been amazing to have each and every one of you here. It has truly been an honor to be allowed this space to share my own experiences and my knowledge and expertise on the matter. And yeah, talk about something that I'm really passionate about and that I think is really important. Hopefully, you'll be able to take some of these things that I've shown and talked about and imbue them into other places in your life, whether or not that's a podcast again, or a stream, or a video series, or whether or not you have to get up and talk about something at work. Hopefully, this will be helpful in all of those situations. But again, my name is Rockette Fox. You can find me. I'm on the show Liminal. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. We all put a ton of work into that, and I, for one, am super proud of it. Yeah, cannot express how proud I am of that piece. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I pretty much anywhere. If you look up Rockette Fox, ROCKETTEFOX, you'll find me. You can say my name 3 times into the mirror, spin around a whole bunch, and then I'll be there when you least expect it. So please feel free to reach out. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know if this was helpful or educational, or if there's anything else you would like to know. And I'm also going to ask that if you end up finishing your story and you feel like sharing it, please, please share it with me. I would love to see it if you want to make a video. I would love to read it if you want to share it that way. But any story that has come out of this, if you want to share it, I would be absolutely thrilled to partake and share that experience with you. So thank you again. This has been amazing. And I hope that you look at this experience, if nothing else, as a means to honor yourself. Honor yourself, give yourself some time and space. You are amazing. Make sure from this point, take a little time for yourself afterward to breathe, take it in. It can be really challenging and really, I don't know if exhausting is the right word, but it can take energy out by going back and writing about things and talking about things that you've experienced. Sometimes it can be a little hard. So I want you to give yourself some space after this to really be with yourself. Get some rest, eat some food, stay hydrated, and please, please take care of yourself. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care.